So hi and good morning everyone. My name is Søraa. I'm the PI of the Bias project. And thank you. So I'm very happy to be here today with all the other projects. I think it's great that we have all been brought together here to continue discussing this issue. Our project is called Bias, Mitigating Biases of AI in the Labor Market. And that's the topic I want to dive into with this presentation. But I wanted to start with this little picture that you can see here behind me, because as with many presentations, we often ask AI to help us, and I have asked AI to make me a normal workplace. And as you can see here, it's about the same person everywhere here. They have just been copy-pasted. And I think this is a good reminder for us to think that we cannot leave the future up to AI to decide, for example, what the normal workplace in the future should be like. But I'll get back to this picture later. So the big question that we are investigating is, when someone applies for a job, how can you make sure that the right person got the job? And also, how can we ensure fair hiring processes? And here again, we see the word fair showing up, which we have seen today is quite a difficult term, but bear with me, we'll dive more into it. First, a little bit about the Bias project. So we are, as the other projects here, funded under Pillar 2 Cluster 4. We are led by us at the Humanities faculty at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. In comparison to the other projects, we are a 4-year project, so we have a little bit more time, but of course we have also done quite a lot and have much more to do. This is our great consortium here, and I'll tell you a little bit about where they are from. So we are led by us in Norway at the Humanities faculty, where we have disciplines such as Science and Technology Studies, Gender Studies, Anthropology, and also computer scientists. Then we have our colleagues at the University of Iceland, which is mostly from sociology, but also their computer science. From Crowd Helix in Ireland and LOBA in Portugal, we have communication and dissemination partners that have made this beautiful map. They are also very happy if you take pictures of the event, and yeah, as you know, the other projects, we need to show that we are active and actually doing things. We have the Center for E-Law at Leiden University here in the Netherlands with Dr. Edward Fosch-Villaronga, who is also here in the center. You can also talk to him later. And we have who are legal experts. We then have Bern University of Applied Sciences in Switzerland, which is our main technical lead, and they will also be present in the panel right after lunch. Then we have Smart Venice in Italy, which are experts on co-creation, and I'll tell you a bit more about that work in particular. And we have two companies, Farplast in Turkey and Digitouch in Estonia. So we are, as you can see, like all corners of Europe in the project. Now, the mission of the Bias project is to empower the AI and human research management community by addressing and mitigating algorithmic biases. And I think a lot of my presentation has already been shown earlier today, so I can skip parts of it. But as was brilliantly shown by the keynotes also in the beginning, we have quite a long history of humans discriminating also when hiring, for example, based on age, gender, race, class, etc. There are many examples of this, of course, but I think it's important to keep in mind that the issues we are facing with AI also have quite deep historical social roots. These are just some examples, and I can take one example from Norway, where I'm from, where studies for several decades have shown that if you have a so-called non-Norwegian sounding name, you have 25% lower chances to be called in for a job interview. So there are examples of people changing their last name to just be called in for a job. And of course we find these issues also throughout Europe. Also with age discrimination, national discrimination, and Yeah, so, but of course we all know this, so I won't go that much in detail. But the big issue then is, now that we see that AI is increasingly being used for recruitment, for example, on finding, screening, and assessing candidates, how can we assure that this move to using AI as a tool for this does not create more discriminatory practices? And there are many companies and tools that are building these sorts of systems. Here are a couple of examples. We have Recruit Robin, which is a Dutch AI tool that screens and searches data from platforms such as LinkedIn to find suitable candidates. Companies such as Higher Value and also Globus AI are also trying to find the correct candidate for the job and also figure out who should first, for example, be promoted and who should be not continued for jobs. Now, the big question that we really wanted to solve, or at least try to find some solutions for in the bias project is, firstly, how can we make sure that AI does not reproduce human bias and discrimination, but also how can we ensure that AI does not invent new forms of discrimination for job applicants and workers. So in bias, we have 3 core project goals. One is awareness raising on the importance of tackling these bias issues when it comes to AI. We also focus on capacity building to equip the AI and human resource management community with both tools and concepts and ways of further understanding how bias can be mitigated. And we're also laying the groundwork for a product from the project that we are developing that I will tell you more about. And as with many of the other projects, we are highly interdisciplinary, and that also shows in our research methodology. We just finished a quite large survey of workers and their perception of bias with over 5,000 respondents. We have several PhD candidates out doing ethnographic fieldwork with employers, employees, and AI developers from different European countries. And we have also created so-called national labs in each country. And if any of you are interested in this topic, you're more than welcome to join the national lab where you are living. And we are doing AI research and development with a focus on natural language processing and case-based reasoning, which our technical lead can, of course, tell you more about if you want to know more about that. Then we are also creating our proof of concept technology that has the working title Debiaser. I learned from the first keynote that we should not call it that, so a good reminder. But that's why we also put it in little quote marks. So we will, of course, change the name to something more suitable. But the thing we want to do with this tool is that we want to look at job applicant texts, and as you can think, even though if you try to anonymize a job applicant text, there can be a lot of inferred information based on, for example, what your hobbies are, what your family situation is, which can tell you about your, for example, your religion or your sexual orientation, etc., that can be used to discriminate. And of course, you have the example of the Amazon company that made the algorithm that decided not to hire women. That is quite well known. But these are just some of the examples of things we know about. And I think it's quite important that we also take into account that more discriminations can happen based on other criteria than such as gender. But I'm using it as an example here in the technical development that we're doing. So we are particularly focusing on the societal stereotypes in word embeddings, societal. Because we know that certain word relations, they can contain certain stereotypes of society. There have been a lot of studies on this. For example, how the word man is to woman as computer programmer is to homemaker, as suggested in the literature. And then we also see that father is to mother as doctor is to nurse, which of course contains a lot of stereotypes that should be challenged. In our technological tool that we are developing, we want to focus on pre-trained language models so that we can make certain that we don't have gendered discrimination in these connections. So, but our technical lead can tell you more about that later. I wanted to focus my last minutes on the interdisciplinary understandings of fairness that we are working on in the project. So for those of you who are familiar with the Altai framework, we can read that AI used in the labor market needs to be trustworthy and socially responsible. But how can we make this happen in practice? So the assessment list for trustworthy artificial intelligence, or Altai, active from 2020, has this requirement number 5, diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness as one of the requirements. And what we have translated that into in our project is that we really need to get everyone involved in hiring processes around the same table to discuss how can we make fair hiring for everyone. So one of the activities that we have done in BIAS is to involve both HR practitioners, AI developers, employers, employees, trade unions, policymakers to sit down and talk about what would a fair hiring process look like to you. And of course, it's the spoiler is that of course we can't all agree what is fair, and I think that is an important takeaway because it is not necessarily something we can program our way into the right answer. It's a great social issues. Because if we look at what is really fairness, there are several different opinions of what is fair. It has different disciplinary understandings. What is fair in a legal sense is not necessarily the same in a computer science sense or a humanities-based approach. And also there are different socio-cultural understandings of what is fairness. Just think about language. The word fairness in the English language is a bit different than you would find in the Norwegian language, for example. And also what is fair for the individual, for the company, for a minority group, or for society could also differ based on how you define fairness, which is why we think it's very important to sit down with all the stakeholders to continue mapping how we can make fair decision processes. But in our project, one of the things we are focusing on specifically is procedural fairness, so that similar candidates are treated in similar ways in a similar hiring decision. But this is also dependent on individual businesses and use cases, which is why we think it's very important also to involve companies and businesses to both provide data and to go forward with what would make sense for them. So to summarize, I'm back at my lovely picture here of the company where everyone looks the same. But what we can say is that hiring is often discriminatory when done by humans. A lot of literature points to this. And we really need to ensure that AI does not also discriminate. Because AI has great potential, but can also lead to exclusion for different groups. And as has been pointed out many times today, how AI is designed and how data is selected and trained are not neutral factors, but can lead to biased outcomes. And therefore we need to ensure that we don't go into this techno-solutionism of thinking that AI can solve everything for us when it can also create a lot of new problems. So I'm ending with this lovely picture of our last consortium meeting in Venice, where one of our partners is located. And what we did here in Venice is that we brought together 9 different countries with different HR experts, AI experts, community stakeholders, and NGOs to sit down and discuss how can we actually make hiring less biased. And we also tested out prototypes of our tool, and I think it was a very nice activity to see that we can all come together, not necessarily to find the one correct decision, but to, as a European community, figure out how do we want society to move. Yeah, that's me. I think